Welcome again to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare. Welcome you to our broadcast, focused on providing you insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. I think you'll really want to get into today's discussion. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. We are rejoined by Norm McCarter, who is our in-studio audience of one. Welcome, Norm.
Good morning, Mr. Hare, and thank you so much.
They thought I had done you like the Guantanamo people. I had kidnapped you and put you on an island someplace.
Hey, it's good to be back, sir.
All right, good to have you back. And of course, we're joined by Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. He's an actual citizen of the 21st century. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People.
I don't think they can hear you. You may need to do your mic a little bit.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare.
All right, here we go. So listen, we want to take today's program. The big issue, obviously, of the day is the arraignment tomorrow of Donald Trump. But beyond just the arraignment, it's the way that the arraignment is being characterized by the people that don't support Donald Trump and by our media. As I said many times, the media, I don't know what the right word is I want to say because I don't want to say something I don't mean to say.
Their presentation,
maybe? The media has a way of contextualizing how you perceive the information that's being given to you. Yeah. So if the media gives you the impression that in the way that they talk about something, that they think that it's measly, you know, it's a low issue and really shouldn't be given as much import as it's being given, they talk about it that way. So when you hear them discuss the arraignment, you hear them discuss it in the context of, well, you know, of all the things they could have been charging Donald Trump with, I mean, he's got the insurrection, you know, he's got the manipulation of the media, he's got the directing the IRS and the Department of Justice to investigate his political enemies. He's got the Mar-a-Lago stealing of the documents, the federal documents that he took, and still hasn't given back. I don't know if we've talked about that. He gave some of the documents back, but he's still holding on to some of the documents that belong to the federal government, and so on. And out of all these things that are potential charges against Donald Trump, the one that they're saying is the most, how should I say, the least significant of those charges is a charge about whether or not he manipulated some tax records to hide that he had paid off Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, had paid her off for her silence over a potential sexual tryst that he says he didn't have, you know, with this woman. So of all the things, the actual crime is taking a record that should have shown that you took this money and gave it to Michael Cohen to repay Michael Cohen for paying off Stormy Daniels, and you treated it as if it was a legal expense. That's they try to say that's just an accounting issue. I want to talk about that. That's not just an accounting issue, but that's what they're characterizing this out of. All these things that you could be talking about what Donald Trump did, this seems to be the least significant. Now, they've been talking about Donald Trump needing to be charged for all of these various crimes that he's been committing in public for months, actually for years. They've been talking about this, right? Mm-hmm. And so now they finally get something out of the Manhattan office of the Attorney General for that district, Alvin Bragg. They finally get something out of that office, and then they beat up on what they got. They treat it like it's like a needless investigation or a needless, you know, charge. So I want to talk about that. I've given you a lot of it in the way that I've given the introduction, but I want to talk a little bit about that and get your thoughts about that. And then I want to drift into another piece, part of what Donald Trump has been using, and he's gotten Lindsey Graham and all these other folks you heard, and that soundbite, by the way, was from our producer, James Braun, who got us that soundbite that was about Lindsey Graham, who all of a sudden is the fanboy of Donald Trump. 5 years ago, we called Donald Trump, sleaze, and he was the worst thing since, Venom and so on. Now, all of a sudden, he's Donald Trump's, fanboy. And saying that we all should be giving our money so that we could defend Donald Trump from these horrible charges of doing what Donald Trump clearly did. Why should we defend Donald Trump from doing something that he obviously did? Right? Why should we be paying for that? But anyway, that's what today's program is going to be about. I wanted to, let me get into it this way. Of all the assertions that are being made regarding the indictment of Donald Trump, the one that seems to require the most attention is the claim that's being made or implied by Trump supporters and nearly all of the prominent media. If you listen to the media talking about this, all of them are giving you the idea that the prosecution of Trump is political and therefore it's suspect, if not invalid. I want to give you a small, a parable and tell me what you think as to whether or not you think this is just. If you type in the phrase Trump, quote, Trump indictment political or not, just type that into your search engine on your phone or on your computer, and I guarantee you will not find on the first 3 or 4 pages of websites that come up any article that actually argues against the idea that the charges against Donald Trump are not political. They will all argue either that the indictment is political, or they give you a lot of rationale for why people would think that it's political. Very few, if I haven't come across any articles that actually argue in favor of the indictment per se, that does not put it into the context of it being a needless indictment. Ask yourself this: if you were a political opponent and you left a fundraiser at a bar, you got into your car and immediately made an illegal U-turn. Norm, I know you've done this.
Yes, sir.
You've been parked right in front of the bar at the fundraiser. You dropped off your check. You said hi to a couple of people, let them know that you were at the fundraiser so they know that you were a fan. And then you jumped in your car, and instead of, pulling out and making a proper turn, at the corner, you just swivel right around in a U-turn in the middle of the street illegally. So let's suppose that occurred.
Okay.
And a police officer who did not support your candidacy pulled you over and said, you just made an illegal a U-turn. I'm giving you a ticket and write you up a ticket, and you got to deal with that ticket. Would that be a political prosecution?
I would say yes.
So you would say it's a political prosecution?
I would say it's...
So I'm going to ask Willie H., because I'm going to assume that Willie H. is a believer in reality and actual facts. So here's the fact in that story that I just gave you.
Okay.
The person who pulled away from the curb and made the U-turn made a U-turn.
Okay.
Is that a fact or not a fact?
Fact.
That's a fact, yeah.
U-turns are illegal unless you see a sign that allows you to be able to make a U-turn. U-turns are illegal. Is that a fact or not a fact? Is that a fact?
It's a fact if it's...
That's a fact.
No.
So I can't hear you. I don't know what's happening with your mic there.
Can you hear me now?
Nope, I still can't hear you.
Oh, you should be able to hear me.
I mean, I can hear you through the window, but I can't hear you through the microphone.
1, 2, yeah, I can hear me.
But my point is that we see that these were facts, right? Mm-hmm. So regardless whether or not you feel that the officer could have chosen not to charge you with the illegal U-turn, the fact that he did charge you with the illegal U-turn is not political because you actually made the illegal U-turn. So you can't say that, well, he chose not to, he chose to prosecute me. He didn't have to prosecute me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's like saying that you see somebody on the steps smoking a blunt, you know, and you decide I'm not going to charge that person because I just think it's a low-level thing and he's not hurting anybody. Or I could charge the person because it's illegal for you to be smoking a blunt, period.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But you can't call it political if what I did is what I actually did.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
If I did it, it's irrelevant whether you think I prosecuted you because I didn't like you. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
What's relevant is you did it.
Right.
That's right. I took into accountability that you said that he went against my political affiliation. So, but yet and still, 100%, I know that it is right for him to charge me because I did make the U-turn.
Right.
I was wrong.
Now I can hate you, you know, for charging me for something so little and whatnot, but that's between me and me, you know, that I hate you. The fact is, I did something that I shouldn't have done, right?
Yeah.
So certainly making a U-turn is a low-level crime.
Right.
It is likely that there have been few, if any, people charged with the same offense under the same circumstances. Would the apparent politics involved make a difference regarding the legitimacy of the charge and the consequences of the charge? And what I'm suggesting to you is, even if you wrap this up in all of the political clothes that I put this example in, it doesn't change the fact that you actually made the illegal U-turn. You did it.
That's right.
So if you get charged for it, you can't say that you got charged politically unless you're saying that there's no such thing as an illegal U-turn. If U-turns are illegal and you made one, then you did something illegal.
That's
Period
right.
blank.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So it's almost like, remember the case of Michael Brown in Ferguson, I think it was Ferguson, Missouri.
Yes, sir.
That he was jaywalking across the street, and a police car pulls him over, and starts giving him grief. Now, jaywalking is illegal,
Right.
so the police officer had a legal framework around which to stop you and say, "Did you realize you're, crossing in the wrong place on this block," or whatever the police officer said. Michael Brown got snippy with the police officer. That's apparent in the observation of the other fellow that was with him when this all occurred. He got snippy with the police officer. The police officer then turned it into a bigger scale issue, made it loud, went and got to his gun. Now why you grabbing your gun?
Wow. Yeah.
On an issue of jaywalking?
Yeah.
Even if you're going to charge this child, with jaywalking,
Right.
What's the gun for? How would you explain to a judge that you pulled a gun on a child, an 18-year-old child, because he was jaywalking? How do you explain that to a judge?
It was fear on the part of the officer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So what I want to discuss today is the fact that Trump is an active political figure. Does the fact that he is an active political figure shield him from prosecution for anything below the most serious offenses? Trump supporters, for example, seem to feel that Trump should be shielded from any crime short of murder.
Right.
They say that even the crime of supporting and promoting an insurrection, which is like bordering on sedition, he shouldn't be. That's no big deal. It's just sedition. He just promoted an insurrection. It was just a riot. It was okay. They just did $140 million worth of damage to the Capitol building.
Well, Mr. Hare, when you got almost half of the country rooting for you to be their president, to be their man, of course, everything you do is going to be like, well.
Yeah, it's almost like he's the Teflon president. You know what I mean? He shouldn't be able to get past this.
And that's really what I'm trying to dig at, from this discussion. I went to an article written by Andrew Prokop. He's a senior politics correspondent at Vox magazine. He covers the White House, elections, political scandals, and investigations. He did an article in the New York Times that was entitled, "How to Tell When an Investigation is Politicized." So he says as someone, he says on the one hand, politicians should not be above the law. If they commit crimes and there's evidence to show that they did commit the crime, they should be charged.
Yes,
that
sir.
should just be normal.
Yeah.
I meant to mention on my way down, there was a story on, I think it was NPR, that talked about General Grant. You remember General Ulysses Grant?
Yeah.
He was the Reconstruction era president, roughly from I think it was 1869 to 1877, roughly in that period.
Yes.
That was most of the Reconstruction period following the Civil War. And he got busted for speeding. You probably saying, well, how can he be speeding when they didn't even have cars in that day? They had horses. They had horse-drawn carriages. And if you get the whip cracking and whatnot, you can get the horses running really, really fast and running dangerously. And if horse-drawn carriages are pulled too fast, guess what happens? They fall over, right? Oh, yeah. And people get killed. The people on the in the carriage and other people on the side of the road wind up getting killed. So you're not allowed to speed. You know, even if you're in a horse-drawn carriage, you're not allowed to speed. But Ulysses Grant was doing it. He gets caught speeding, and guess who catches him? A black police officer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was in 1869. 4 years before this, that same black police officer would have been a slave.
Yeah.
Right? 4 years later, he's now a police officer, right? And he's the one who catches Ulysses Grant speeding. But he gives him a favor, gives him a mulligan. Mm-hmm. You know, he says, listen, man, I mean, you know, we good. I'm good with you. You know, you good with me. Everything's cool, but you can't be doing this, okay? This is reckless, and somebody around here is going to get hurt. I know you like to get around wherever you're supposed to be going and whatnot. You don't have somebody driving. You drive yourself, but you can't be speeding with these horses, okay? You got to slow this down.
Is that real,
Grant said, you're right. I shouldn't have done this, and he gets away without a ticket. The
Mr.
very
Hill.
next night, Ulysses Grant is out there speeding again. Right?
Mr. Hare, is that real?
This is the truth.
Okay.
This actually happened,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
And so this black police officer pulls him over again and says, listen, player, I got to give you a ticket now because you ain't hearing me. You know, I tried to give you a mulligan, but you didn't feel it. I mean, the very next day, you're doing the same thing, right? And so he gave him a ticket. Ulysses Grant actually wrote to the guy and thanked him, said, I appreciate you doing what you were doing because no man is above the law, including me.
Wow.
But, of course, he didn't mean that because when he was supposed to come in for his court appearance, he didn't show up. Right? He just gave him some money to pay the fine and didn't bother to show up.
At least
right?
he paid the fine.
But I just wanted to throw that out there, you know, that he was the sitting president of the United States, and he was arrested for speeding in 1869. How fast can you be going on anything in 1869?
Right,
they didn't have any cars.
Right.
There's no trucks.
Right.
Even the boats couldn't go that fast. Okay. Right.
Now, okay.
But he got busted anyway. So all of this stuff that we're hearing now, you can't do this. He's Donnie. He's the former president of the United States. He might be the president again in 2024. You can't do this. This is just horrible. It's political. That's bonus. That's bogus.
Yeah.
That's bogus.
Mr. Hare, I'm sorry, but that story sounds like science fiction. Where can I find that?
I would say Ulysses. Just type in Ulysses Grant busted for speeding.
Wow.
And this will come up.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm still having real trouble. I'm hearing you through the window, but I'm not hearing you through.
Maybe you got to turn up your headsets because I hear myself.
You think it's my headset?
Yeah, you probably just got to turn it up.
Well, I got it turned to as loud as it goes, and nothing happened.
Maybe
here.
your headset's not working. All right.
So we'll just wait until
you break. I'll come and fix it.
Wait till the break, and then you'll pretend that you didn't know what you were doing. And, okay. All right.
Yeah, because I hear myself good here.
So how do you tell whether something is a prosecution is political or not? Andrew Prokoff gives you a schema, you know, of how you would do that. He says if it looks like the prosecution is on a fishing expedition, searching around for something that they can charge a candidate with or a office holder with, that would be a political prosecution. So an example of that would be when Bill Clinton was president, Hillary Clinton apparently had spent $10,000 buying a share of a limited partnership for some land. And she was the beneficiary, according to the charge, of insider trading because she was able to sell off that property for $100,000, even though she bought it for $10,000. And then later on, the property was determined to be wetland, swampland, and it was degraded in its value. So she got a big profit from something that turned out to be a fairly worthless investment later on.
I just want to ask, was that property valued so high after she bought it because she was presidential and her?
No, this is before she was president.
Oh,
this was when she was the first lady of the governorship of Georgia,
okay.
right? Bill Clinton was Arkansas. Bill Clinton was the governor of Arkansas. And so she made an invest. She's a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she's got money, right? And her family was, very wealthy. The Rodham family was very wealthy. And so she bought this investment, and the investment multiplied 1,000-fold. She went from it being a $10,000 investment to being a $100,000 value when she sold it at $100,000. But later on, they were not able to do with the property what they had intended because it was a wetlands, kind of swampland, and it was just too costly to redevelop it so that you could put housing on it.
I was just wondering what made it valuable. How did it just become valuable from?
Well, you have open land. If people think that somebody's going to move into that area and it's going to become an area that people want to have a house in,
I got you.
It becomes a high value, property. So that's what was happening for her. Mm-hmm. So the Republicans said that this was insider trading, some kind of scheme, scam was going on, and Hillary Clinton benefited from some kind of a scam.
Yeah.
So that was what the investigation was about. They investigated this whitewater property. That's what the whitewater refers to. To that property.
Yeah.
They investigated this property transaction. But what did they actually bust Bill Clinton for? They busted him for doing the donkey with Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
In the building, in the office.
Yes, sir.
In the blue room or whatever they call these rooms and whatnot, right?
The blue room.
They busted him for that. Now, I'm not saying that he shouldn't have been busted for that. Don't get me wrong. My point is that the investigation was about the whitewater property, but what they actually busted him on was this, liaison he had going on with Monica Lewinsky.
He got the blue light
which
special.
had absolutely nothing to do with the whitewater stuff at all. So clearly, the Republicans had promoted. I just lost his name now. It'll come back to me. The Starr, Kenneth Starr. Clearly, the Republicans had recruited Kenneth Starr with the goal of finding something on Bill Clinton that they could hang on him to diminish him as a president, so that he wouldn't be able to win his second term, and or get him out of the office altogether because of indecent, conduct and so on. So they were looking. There was a fishing expedition.
Yeah.
That's a political prosecution. At least that's what Prokop is trying to help us to understand.
Yes.
He suggested that if a prosecution is based on obscure technical matters, in other words, something that nobody ever heard of before, that's a crime. I never heard of that being a crime. That usually means that the prosecution itself, the reason for it is not a legitimate public safety, kind of reason. The reason for it is people looking to do political damage to somebody by getting them on this charge on a weird thing that nobody's ever even heard of before.
Mr. Hare, the question I have is this. He's being indicted on such a minute issue. The issues that are really, really prevalent, he's not even really being charged with, at least not to this point. How come?
See, I like the way you just said that because you're repeating what the media is saying.
Right.
You're verbatim. You're repeating what the media is saying. You're saying that he's being charged with this light stuff,
Yes.
And why is he being charged with this when there's all of this big stuff that he could have been
Yes,
charged
sir.
with?
Yes, sir.
And what I'm suggesting to you is, it's not as light as you are characterizing that it is, number one.
Yeah.
Right? Number two, he can only charge against violations of state law. Other things that we're talking about that Trump can be charged with are either charges in other states other than New York states that's got not in Abrams' control at all, or they're federal charges, which he's a state prosecutor. He wouldn't have anything to do with federal charges. So the things that he has something to do with had to do with changing the value of real estate holdings to say that they were a high value when you were trying to get money from a bank. And then when you had to pay your taxes, you said the same property was at a much, much lower value.
Right.
That sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Now, those are state crimes. They may not seem like big deals to you. Well, he said something was, worth $1 million, was only worth $300,000. That's wrong, but, are we going to charge him for it? He's the president of the United States. We're going to charge him for it? Yes. You have to charge him for that because if you don't, everybody else will do the same thing, and they'll use the fact that you didn't charge President Trump, former President Trump, you didn't charge him for something that you know he did. You have the record of it that shows you that he did it. He even admitted that he did it, right? If you don't charge him for it, everybody else is going to do the same thing, and their defense is going to be, I'm just write me down for the Donald Trump defense. Whatever defense he put up, that's the same defense I'm putting up, right? I mean, that's what happens if you don't. So the way you frame that, I think, is perfect for the discussion that we're trying to have, right? That's exactly what the issue is. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it as we go along. So just hold on to that point for just a second.
All right.
They talk about what they refer to as novel legal theories. Now, a novel legal theory is you coming up with a rationale for why you're going to charge somebody for with something that nobody ever heard of before, okay? I don't even have an example of what that might be, but just to make a stupid example, let's suppose that you were an astronaut and you flew on a spaceship to the moon to do a walk on the moon, and simultaneously somebody was watching you on TV doing that, and they were so surprised at your success at getting off the ground and send this great big bullet up in the sky, they gasped and they fell out on the floor and they knocked their head against the table and they got hurt. So the novel theory is that you are responsible for that person getting hurt because they were gasping at something that you did.
Okay.
That's a novel theory. You would agree that's a novel theory, right?
Very novel.
Okay. Well, but if somebody's getting charged with something like that, you should suspect the prosecution that there must be a different reason why they're charging this person. It can't be for that reason because that's a stupid reason for you to charge somebody in the first place. So that's one of the ways you can look at something to see whether or not it's a political prosecution. He goes on to say that if you look at the investigators, are they internally divided against the case's strength? Well, that has come up. I forget his name, Pomerantz, I think, was the investigator originally on this case involving Donald Trump. And there was a division between Abrams and how do you say it? Pomerantz. There was a division between them. Pomerantz's team thought that the case should go forward. Abrams said, I don't think you got enough stuff here, for this to go forward right now. So there was division, amongst them. But ultimately, they prosecuted the case, and Pomerantz, even though he wrote a book attacking Alvin Bragg, how do you say his Pomerantz? I think it's Pomerantz is how you say his name. He's actually a fan of what Alvin Bragg has done in this case. So they've fused together and they're no longer divided, right now. But this is what they're trying to give you as a rationale. They involve, if a prosecution involves scrutiny and an investment of resources that would not have been made to investigate anybody else, that would suggest a political prosecution. And then if those in charge of the prosecution have obvious political motives, that could be it. Now, obvious political motives that they're asserting is Alvin Abrams is up for election in, I believe, 2024. So they're suggesting that because he's up for election in 2024, it's to his advantage for him to be the one bringing these charges against Donald Trump right now. And if he succeeds, that's going to make him a hero. So when he goes into 2024, the public is going to feel like, yeah, Abrams is a great guy. He's a successful, prosecutor, blah, blah, blah. And that's going to help him win his election. Well, the reality is if that's the case, no prosecutor would be able to prosecute a case unless it's before 2 years before their next election, because otherwise they could be accused of prosecuting the case to build a resume, for the election season coming up the next year. You can't run a DA's office like that, an attorney general's office like that. You have to just prosecute the cases that are in front of you. You investigate the cases that are in front of you.
One by one.
And that's just the way it has to be, right? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to give you this to give you a little bit of an understanding of why this rationale is being spun out by the media. But more importantly, I want you to understand that the media is co-signing this rationale for a number of reasons. The media is co-signing this because they like to keep this agitation going on. Agitation means you have more people interested. The more people interested, the more viewers you have to a program.
It's political.
The more viewers you have to a program, the higher price you can sell commercials for that program. And I mean, I hate to sound so cynical, but that's appears to me to be what is going on. Yeah. They also want to keep this ideation of Donald Trump being the heir apparent to be the Republican nominee for the presidential nomination in 2024. They want that because they think the biggest circus is going to be any election where you got Donald Trump on one side and a Democrat on the other side. Doesn't matter who the Democrat is. The fact that Donald Trump is on the one side is going to make the whole thing a circus.
The big ticket.
And that's what they're really trying to promote. So you have the media sort of centering people or contextualizing this arraignment as if this is softball stuff, that what really should be happening is the big stuff, right? I know we got to take a break right now, and we'll talk about this, but that what's really happening is the big stuff, the tax fraud, the stealing of the presidential, documents, all those things, the insurrection stuff, all that stuff is they consider to be the big stuff. But I want you to just make this note before we go to the break. Put this down in your thought process. If they charge murder on Donald Trump today, the same people that are saying that Trump should not be being charged for crimes today would be the same people who'd be charging that Trump shouldn't be charged for murder tomorrow. It wouldn't matter what Trump did. They would still say the same thing. So I just want you all to understand that context. So listen, we got to take a quick break. We are responsible for talking to our sponsors because they're the reason why we have the program in the first place. Thank you all for sponsoring us, for being able to keep the show on the air. Look forward to talking to you all on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
Was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork. Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
One day, I'll teach chemistry to kids.
I'm going to be an architect.
My dream is to be a chef.
This is a world of possibilities. A world in which people who put their minds to something can really make a difference.
My goal is to help the environment.
Someday I'll find a cure for cancer.
At the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid, we believe that aspiring minds can achieve anything. So we dedicate ourselves to making sure everyone has an opportunity to go to college. Each year, we provide more than $150 billion in grants, loans, and work-study funds, making higher education possible for anyone at any stage of life.
I can go back to college.
I can change careers.
I can make a difference.
Federal Student Aid, proud sponsor of the American Mind. Learn more about money for college at studentaid.gov.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM WBNY Buffalo.
All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host here for this next half hour of our program. We're here with Norm MacArthur, who does who is our in-studio audience of one, and we have Willie H. that does the live streaming of the program. Welcome all. So, as I indicated before, it wouldn't matter what Trump was being charged with. The same people that are claiming that it's a political prosecution because they say it was a low-level kind of thing that they're charging Trump as offending. It wouldn't matter if Trump shot somebody on the steps of the White House. They would still say it was a political prosecution. It doesn't matter what you say because their objective is the same. They want Trump to be the next president of the United States. The media wants the circus, of the Trump against anybody, in the Democratic Party. And you have a bunch of people in the public who just see it as virtual entertainment. They just like to hear it. Go ahead, Norm. I can't hear Norm's mic now.
Yeah, you can now. Go ahead.
Can you?
Yeah, I hear it now.
Okay. I was just wanting to comment. It's almost like the media is like the big instigator. And what they do is whatever it is, whether it's right or wrong, they spin it. It's a monetary thing. It keeps things going.
See, what would make sense to me if the media was actually being honest? They would say there's a lot of people that feel that this is a political prosecution. They feel like, he clearly made these payments to Michael Cohen to reimburse Cohen for the money that he gave to Stormy Daniels, and he gave the money to Stormy Daniels to keep her quiet so she wouldn't be talking about having a sexual relationship with him in front of his wife and in front of the elections that were coming up in a couple of weeks, at that time. This was in 2016. And so all of those things could be true, but those are like small potatoes kind of stuff. And bringing, an investigation against a sitting president over something so mediocre, we think that's wrong. It's fine for the media to say that because that's reporting, right? but you would expect that the media would then report the other side. The other side of it is, let's look at, and I just want you to feel this. I know you got a comment, but just feel this piece with me. The other side of it is $130,000 Trump spent out of his pocket, but he recorded it as a legal expense for the Trump organization, his company. So essentially, he created a expense that did not actually exist. He was able to not pay taxes on that $130,000 worth of income that he had that year. So assuming that he's in a 25% tax bracket, that's going to be something like 25 or 30 or 30, like $30,000 of taxes that he wound up not paying because he deducted that $130,000 from his company's taxable income or his own, taxable income.
Yeah.
So that's illegal.
Yeah.
Right? That's not small potatoes illegal. That's as blatantly tax fraud as you can possibly be.
Yeah.
Right? So of course he should be charged with that. You should not be doing that. You notice that when Joe Biden filed his tax returns, he didn't file them himself. He went to some firm that actually does tax returns. And they did everything, and all he did was signed off and said, yep, I agree with this, I question that, and he got everything organized and he signed off on it. That way he wouldn't be put in a position where people could say that he did some flaky things, with his tax returns. Trump was doing things deliberately with his tax returns to minimize the taxes that he had to pay. So independent of whether or not you feel the Stormy Daniels, piece of this thing was legitimate or not, independent of that, the fact that he manipulated his taxes so that he was able to get a $130,000 deduction from his taxable income, which saved him $30,000+ in taxes that he didn't have to pay. That's significant. That's serious. So go ahead, Norm.
What I was kind of thinking, it kind of seems to me also and I'm still kind of on the media. It seems that that the media is, and I hate to say this, but they lean Republican.
They lean towards the people that own them.
Which is money,
right.
which
See,
to me.
And I, that's why I need for us to keep repeating this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The people that own the media, I mean, about 80% of the media in this country is owned by like 8 to 10, big companies, right?
Yeah.
And those companies are owned by people who make billions of dollars a year.
Right. It's about money.
Right. Their income, it's not that their wealth is $1 billion. Their income in a given year is $1 billion or more dollars.
Yeah.
So for those people, a difference of 2% in your tax rate that you have to pay is significant amounts of money. If you make $10 billion in a year, a 10% reduction in your taxable income is a $1 billion reduction in your taxable income.
That's a lot. That's huge.
That's at least $250 million in taxes that you don't have to pay.
Yeah,
that's big money.
That's big,
and
money.
That's huge.
Okay, so of course you can't trust the people that own the media. Their self-interest is not involved in paying taxes fairly.
It is going against their own self-interest when they fail to bring up certain aspects like stealing of the documents in Mar-a-Lago.
There you go.
And the manipulation of the taxes, Stormy Daniels situation. Right. I mean, all of these things are it would be going against everything, I guess, that they stand for. Not that they stand for, but what the money represents.
It's just the reality. I'm an African person. If you start talking to me about, well, I don't think that we should have all of these African faces on our magazines anymore, because a lot of people don't like that.
Right.
I'm going to feel sensitive about that.
Right.
Now, in reality, I have no stake in it, one way or the other. I'm not paying for the magazine cover, right? So I don't really have a stake in it, but I'm going to have an attitude about it because I'm going to feel like my interests are not being respected, okay? So we all are going to be responsive to what we feel is in our own self-interest. Remember what we've said many, many billions of times on this program. The only motivation that endures forever, that never goes away, it is always the same, it always works every single time, is self-interest. Self-interest trumps everything. It trumps religion, it trumps values, it trumps priorities, it trumps political affiliations, it even trumps profit. Self-interest trumps everything. Whatever you feel is in your self-interest, you will keep doing it over and over and over again unless something else turns out to be more in your self-interest. Self-interest is the guiding, it's the North Star for everybody. It's what guides everybody's actions. So don't get upset that the media behaves the way that it behaves. Understand that the media is behaving the way that they are for a reason. Go ahead.
I'm not upset about that in any stretch of the imagination, but there should be a point where there should be a parity or an evenness at least when it comes down to the way things are represented.
They should do something. It's a new word. I just found out about it 3 or 4 days ago. I tried to get a definition on it. Hopefully it makes some sense. It's called integrity.
Integrity. Yes, sir.
You are responsible for showing integrity in your reporting, right? So when Donald Trump does something that is illegal, don't come out and say, well, this trivial thing that Donald Trump did, I don't know why anybody would make any big deal about it. Don't frame it like that and then report what he did.
Right.
Report what he did. Say that there are going to be some people that think this is trivial, but here's why other people would say it's not trivial.
Right.
And show both sides of it.
That's exactly what I mean. Because it's just like you said, integrity overall, and then it gives an evenness and it gives everybody a viewpoint. And even the little people feel represented.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so there's a lot more on this, but I wanted to get into one of these other pieces where essentially I wanted to get to the point of what happens if you let Donald Trump off the hook. By that I mean, what happens if you don't prosecute Donald Trump for the things that you already know that he has done? Let's just take this one thing. This article was written by Kimberly Whale. It was entitled, "The Cost of Not Indicting Trump Now is a Presidency Without Guardrails." In other words, if you don't stop this now, where does it go? As I indicated about the tax returns, right? If I found out that you took a deduction for something and it saved you $10,000, $15,000, $30,000 in taxes you had to pay, and I had the same thing that I could have done, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to deduct that from my taxes too.
Right. Mr. Hare, just like you just said, it sets a precedent
there you go.
for negative things that other people will take the ball and run with it.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
And so, look at what Donald Trump has done. Now, I don't think it's actually illegal for Donald Trump to make a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels for her silence, about the sexual affair that she says they had. I don't think that's illegal. I find it curious that you would pay somebody $130,000 to keep them quiet about something that you said never occurred in the first place. Why wouldn't you just say it never occurred in the first place and argue that out? Right. Make her prove it. You know what I mean? Well, why would you pay $130,000, for that? If that's the case, I should line up over there next to him too and say, I know there's something. You were smoking a blunt. I didn't smoke a blunt. Yeah, I say you did. And I need $130,000. Come on, get it, give me quickly. Well, that wouldn't make any sense, right? I couldn't just come up with something out of the blue and ask you for money.
But it's when we really, and you give this some thought process, and I'm totally against pretty much everything Donald Trump stands for.
Uh-huh.
But the power of suggestion is very powerful. And given suggestion.
I get it. I mean, it is a cute lady, and she says, I slept with this dude, and that they were on the boat together. They were at some place together and whatnot. There's a circumstantial, rationale that would make you believe or want to believe that something like this occurred, right?
Yeah.
But the point, however, is that it doesn't appear to be illegal for him to have sent money to her for that reason. What is illegal is he claimed that the money was from his Trump organization, his company.
Okay.
That his company therefore took $130,000 out of the company's trove and passed that money to Michael Cohen, who then passed that money to Stephanie Clifford, whose stage name is Stormy Daniels. Okay. So that part of it is where the illegality occurs.
Yes.
Why does it become illegal? It becomes illegal because you're claiming that it's a legal expense. If it's a legal expense, when you file your taxes, you put this down as a legal expense, which means you earned income, but a portion of your income was offset by this expense. Now, if the expense was a personal expense and not a business expense, it wouldn't be on your books as a legal expense. So you would have paid taxes on that income. But because you put it down as a legal expense, you were able to deduct $130,000 from your taxable income and therefore pay no taxes on that money. That's independent about what you feel about Stormy Daniels, Stephanie Clifford, whatever way you want to call her, independent of how you feel about that. This is tax fraud.
Right.
Period. Yeah. Okay? And it's felony tax fraud. It may not be a Class A felony. It may be a Class E felony, but it's a felony tax fraud nonetheless.
Is all tax fraud felonies?
I don't think all tax frauds are felony, but I'm pretty sure this one is a felony.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, sir.
See, so that's the big issue.
One more question.
Sure.
Does it go to the amount of money that's being defrauded?
I think that has something to do with it. You know, in other words, if it was like $1,000, it may be a different degree of crime.
Okay.
But I think it's because I think it's on the same ladder, right? So if it's tax fraud and it was just for a few hundred dollars, it probably would be a violation. A little bit more money, it would be a misdemeanor. A little bit more money becomes a felony. Then it becomes a higher felony depending on how much money was involved. So in statements in the press, like they say something like the lack of surprise regarding the lack of surprise stems from the fact that it's clear that Trump has been the target of potential prosecution by politically ambitious local district attorneys in New York and Georgia and by a politicized federal Justice Department for some time. That's the assertion that's being made by the opponents of Donald Trump. The fact is that Trump has been a target of potential prosecutions because Trump has and continues to do things that seem clearly to be in violation of the law, period. That's why Trump is in the lens of the prosecutors, not because they don't like him politically, not because they don't like his mother, not because they don't like his father who was a Ku Klux Klansman, not because they don't like him as the owner of properties that he was discriminating against people being able to live in, and so on. Trump is in the lens or the scope of prosecutors because of things that Trump is doing, not things that people are inferring that he did, but the things that he did. Trump called for a disruptive event at the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. Yes or no? Trump called for his supporters to make protests against his arraignment. Yes or no? Trump asked a Georgia Secretary of State to invent 11,781 votes to give Trump the Electoral College votes from Georgia. Yes or no? Trump co-signed a scheme invented by John Eastland to create fake slates of electors in at least 5 states to fraudulently cast their votes for Trump, causing a dispute over who the legitimate electors were, slowing down the certification process and giving Trump the opportunity to have the 2020 election thrown into the vote of the state legislatures rather than the vote of the population of people of the United States. Either that happened or it didn't happen. Yes or no? Trump directed IRS officials to audit his enemies' tax returns. Yes or no? If the answer to all of these questions is yes, then Trump is supposed to be prosecuted at least 11 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
He should be being prosecuted for the next 46 years. He should be under prosecution to get all of these things tried out, before a court of law.
Right, right.
The Daily Signal article asserts that now, however, Bragg, the current Manhattan DA, who came into office touting liberal prosecution policies, has apparently charged Trump with alleged crimes. Now, what is liberal non-prosecution policies? The fact that Bragg stated a policy of not seeking jail sentences for a wide range of petty offenses does not suggest that his office would not prosecute offenses. Being a liberal official does not mean you allow crimes to go unpunished. It simply means that you prosecute those offenses that cause serious harms to society, and you use other preventive strategies to deal with low-level offenses that only harm you and don't harm other people. That's what being liberal is. It doesn't mean that you don't prosecute people. That's just a lie. And I blame the media because the media repeats this. What I'm saying to you is what's actually in the media.
Yeah.
It says, even if Trump's only crime was that he used his own funds to pay Michael Cohen back for the $130,000 that Cohen paid to Stephanie Clifford, Stormy Daniels, he did try to deduct, he actually did deduct the $130,000 from his taxable income in 2016 from his company. Either took it from his own income or from his company, the Trump Organization, and that clearly is tax fraud. Most of the characterizations of the indictment as politically motivated is based on the media pundits' assertion that the prosecution of Trump is based on some novel theory never tested. Quoting the media again, with respect to the campaign finance charges, in essence, the government's theory was that when Cohen made the initial payment to Daniels, he was doing so in order to influence the 2016 presidential election and was therefore making a campaign donation in excess of the legal limit for which he was ultimately reimbursed. This assertion is based on these media pundits' belief, on their beliefs. They don't know that that's what Bragg's thought was. That's what they're just assuming, or they're contriving that that's what Bragg's rationale was. We won't know what Bragg's rationale was until tomorrow, when the indictment is actually read. I need for you all to understand it's one indictment, but inside that one indictment, there are 30 different charges. 30. They can't all be 30 charges saying the same thing. Stormy Daniels, Stormy, that can't be the whole thing, right? There's got to be a lot more that's involved in this.
I see that as being a pretty big indictment. But for me, and this is just a personal thing for me, it seems to me that, just like you say, you refer to me as the citizen here. So what I'm looking at right now for myself is the insurrection issue. Now, that to me seems to be the biggest and the strongest issue.
But remember, that's a federal crime.
So this federal crime can't be prosecuted under state.
Right.
Okay, I respect that,
Right.
but it has to be federally prosecuted at some point.
Remember, you have a new prosecutor, Jack Smith,
okay,
who is taking over this case now. So Cyrus Vance is gone. I forgot Merrick Garland is the Attorney General right now for the country. So this is under his jurisdiction.
Okay.
And Jack Smith is the special investigator on this case.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on it for about 3.5 months now. I suspect by the time we get to June, we'll probably have a indictment of Trump on the insurrection charges.
One last question, and I hate to hold things up, but with this and all of these things that Trump should be indicted for, do you believe that this will hold him up from being able to run for office?
No, because this is the United States, and because the country was founded by criminals, that the country was created by stealing land from people who lived on the land. That the country was created by killing some 25 million indigenous people who lived on this land in 1492, killing 25 million over the course of a 200-year period, killing 25 million indigenous people, okay? you could be a criminal and still be the president of the United States. I just want you to be clear about
Well, it
that.
seems like criminals do well in the United States.
But it doesn't seem like someone could be under indictment and at the same time be running for president.
It shouldn't be, but it can actually be.
He's popular, so his name is out there.
It's possible that you could be in jail. You could be in prison as the president of the United States. Now, you would hope that the cabinet officials in the country, that they would come together and they would use the 25th Amendment to have the president knocked out of his office on the basis of I forget the correct word. It's not malfeasance. It's his inability to be able to perform the duties of his office based on his infirmity. And so the 25th Amendment could be used. But you don't know if the 25th Amendment would be used. The way the Republicans behave, they may say, well, we got him in jail now, so we know we got him under control. There's no need to make him give up his office. We'll just run the presidency, through his jail cell or whatever it is they want to do. I'm making that up. I don't know what the Republicans would do, in that circumstance. But I just want you to be clear that you don't have to give up your presidency according to the law. You could be in prison and still hold on to your presidency unless the cabinet comes together and knocks you out.
Wow.
So listen, that's all we can cover today. I really wanted to get together with you on something else. I know that they've been claiming that crime has been out of control in New York.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's right.
But the reality is, if you looked at crime, let's just take a couple of incidences. In 1990, you had 57,000 major offenses in the District of Manhattan in 1990. But in 2022, you only had 14,000 incidences of felony offenses. So the number of felony offenses declined by 75%. 75%, even though the media is running around repeating everything that Donald Trump and, what's his name, Lindsey Graham and Marjorie Taylor Greene and so on, these people are saying that crime is way out of control in New York City. That simply is not true. Crime is much, much lower in New York City now than it was 30 years ago. So I just wanted to make sure we got that out there. We'll get into more of that when we talk on Wednesday. Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to talking to you all here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM, WBNY. We'll see you on Wednesday at 9 o'clock.